You think her ring should make everything simple, but it doesn't. You think if a married woman likes you, it must mean you've won something. But sometimes what feels like validation is really a test of your discipline. You think the danger is in not noticing the signs. It isn't. The real danger is noticing them and turning them into permission. That is how men lose their center. Not through force, through ego, through fantasy, through the quiet thrill of being wanted by someone they should never try to possess. If you need truth more than comfort, subscribe now because you do not need more content feeding your impulses. You need reminders. You need standards. You need a voice that tells you the truth when your pride starts dressing temptation up like destiny. Here's what it really means when a married woman likes you but is hiding it. It does not automatically mean she wants an affair. It does not automatically mean she is unhappy. It does not automatically mean you are special in the way your ego wants to believe. It means attraction can exist even where boundaries should be stronger. It means human beings are complicated. It means chemistry does not cancel consequences. And if you are a man with self-respect, you do not read those signs as opportunity first. You read them as information, then you read yourself. That is the thesis, not how to get her, how to see clearly, not how to exploit tension, how to stay intact inside it. Because the misconception is what destroys you. The misconception says if she's married and still likes you, then your effect must be powerful. The hard truth says maybe. But power without restraint is weakness wearing cologne. If your first response to hidden interest from a married woman is excitement instead of caution, you are not in control. Your ego is. Why does this happen? Because attention is intoxicating, especially forbidden attention. It hits deeper. It feels heavier. It flatters the part of you that still wants proof. Proof that you matter. Proof that you stand out. Proof that you can pull someone who is technically unavailable. That's the root cause, not love, not fate. Validation, hunger. And hunger makes men stupid. What does it cost you? Peace, precision, character. You start reading too much into every moment. You start romanticizing what should be handled with distance. You start justifying what you would hate if the roles were reversed. That's called hypocrisy. And every time you betray your own code for a thrill, you train yourself to become less trustworthy to everyone, including yourself. So reframe this now. If a married woman likes you and is hiding it, the central question is not, how do I respond so she chooses me? The real question is, can I stay grounded enough to recognize what is happening without becoming the kind of man who feeds on secrecy? That is the adult question. That is the man's question. And yes, there are signs, real ones. But hear me clearly. You are not learning these signs so you can chase. You are learning them so you can see reality without lying to yourself. Because clarity without discipline is still destruction. The first sign is selective attention, not basic politeness, not social warmth, selective attention. She listens differently when you speak. She remembers details she had no practical reason to remember. She tracks your presence in the room. Her energy sharpens around you. Why? Because attention reveals value. People unconsciously monitor what matters to them. If her focus keeps drifting back to you, if her awareness of you feels stronger than the situation requires, that means something. But do not become childish here. One smile means nothing. One laugh means nothing. One kind conversation means nothing. Pattern matters. Repetition matters. Context matters. Weak men build a fantasy out of one moment. Broken men ignore repeated signals because they are scared to trust reality. You become neither. You observe. The second sign is nervous control. She is trying not to show it, which is exactly why it shows. Her tone changes. Her expression tightens, then softens. She becomes more self-aware in your presence. She might adjust her posture, fix her hair, manage her words more carefully, or suddenly become quieter than usual. That contradiction matters. Attraction does not always make people bold. Sometimes it makes them precise. Sometimes it makes them guarded. Sometimes it makes them act almost too normal. That's called suppression. And suppression leaks. Again, control your ego. Not every nervous woman wants you. Not every shift in behavior is desire. Maybe she's cautious. Maybe she senses tension and wants distance. Maybe she simply knows this dynamic is dangerous. You see the difference? This is why maturity matters. You do not just ask, is she reacting? You ask, what is the pattern and what is the ethical reality around it? The third sign is unnecessary proximity. She finds reasons to be near you when there are easier options. She lingers. She takes the long route. She positions herself where conversation can happen naturally. She stays in your orbit a little longer than the moment requires. That matters because attraction often seeks closeness before it seeks confession. The body moves first, the narrative comes later. But this is where reckless men destroy themselves. They feel proximity and interpret it as invitation. Slow down. Proximity is not consent. Proximity is not permission. Proximity is not a green light to escalate. It is data. That's it. You gather data. You do not pounce on it like an undisciplined boy who has never learned to sit inside tension without acting stupid. The fourth sign is emotional favoring. She opens a little more with you. She shares more than the moment requires. She seems to want your perspective, your reaction, your presence in her internal world. There is a difference between talking and confiding. There is a difference between friendliness and emotional preference. If she consistently lowers the wall more around you than she does around others, if you sense a private lane forming inside a public connection, that is not accidental. That's called emotional migration. And it is dangerous precisely because it does not feel dramatic at first. No scandal, no confession, just a deeper rhythm, a private current, a growing sense that you understand each other too well. Men get trapped here because it feels clean. It feels innocent. It feels like we're just talking. No. Be honest. If emotional intimacy is growing in the shadow of a marriage, you are not in neutral territory anymore. The fifth sign is hidden availability. She creates small windows for contact that do not need to exist. Extra conversation, extra checking in, extra time. Extra responsiveness in moments where restraint would make more sense. Not always constant. Sometimes the opposite. Sometimes hot, then careful. Warm, then distant. Why? Because she feels something and is trying to manage it. That push-pull does not always mean games. Sometimes it means conscience. This is where emotionally weak men get addicted. They confuse inconsistency with depth. They say, it must be real because it's complicated. No. Complexity is not always meaning. Sometimes complexity is conflict. Sometimes it is someone divided between desire and duty. You do not build your identity on somebody else's internal split. That's called borrowing chaos. The sixth sign is covert respect for your frame. She watches how you carry yourself. She seems to settle when you are calm. She responds to your steadiness. She notices your boundaries. She tests, maybe subtly, whether you are the kind of man who would take the bait or the kind of man who would remain composed. And understand this clearly. A married woman being drawn to your discipline is not the same thing as her wanting you to break it. Sometimes what she is feeling is attraction to your groundedness, because groundedness is rare. Sometimes what affects her is that you do not lunge, do not flatter, do not act thirsty. That's called masculine restraint. And that restraint matters more than the signs themselves, because what she feels is her business. What you do is your character. Now let's go deeper. Why would this even happen in the first place? Because marriage does not erase human perception. It does not delete attraction. It does not make everyone blind. People can notice beauty, strength, presence, steadiness, intelligence. They can feel the pull and still choose not to act. That is what integrity is, not the absence of temptation, the refusal to feed it. So the real issue is not whether she feels something. The real issue is whether you can carry yourself with enough self-respect to not turn that feeling into a private theater for your ego. Because here is the hard truth most men do not want to hear. If you need a married woman's hidden attraction to feel powerful, you are still empty in places you have not fixed. And empty men are dangerous men, not because they are evil, because they are easy to bait. They will betray standards for validation. They will call it chemistry. They will call it connection. They will call it, it just happened. Nothing just happens when you had 10 chances to step back and chose not to. That's called participation. Now picture the man who gets this right. The man does not get drunk on being desired. He gets clearer. He does not confuse temptation with meaning. He sees the signal, and instead of expanding, he stabilizes. He becomes cleaner in speech, cleaner in conduct, cleaner in boundaries. He does not flirt in the dark and call himself honorable in the light. He is one man in every room. He has a life beyond female attention. He has purpose. He has work. He has standards that do not bend because the situation is emotionally charged. He is not cold. He is principled. He is not afraid of attraction. He is simply not ruled by it. He does not need to prove he could have crossed the line. He gains nothing from that. He already knows who he is. That man does not feed secrecy. He does not cultivate private intensity where public boundaries should exist. He does not become her emotional escape hatch. He does not audition for a role in someone else's unresolved life. He respects marriage enough to not play games around it, and he respects himself enough to not accept crumbs disguised as chemistry. That is the archetype, not the man who wins the forbidden woman, the man who wins against his weaker impulses, the man who can feel the pull and still choose alignment. The man whose self-respect is stronger than his curiosity. The man whose masculinity is not measured by conquest, but by command of self. So what do you do if you see the signs? You get honest fast. You stop romanticizing subtle tension. You stop replaying moments for dopamine. You stop testing the boundary just to see what would happen. You stop creating extra chances for private closeness. You stop, then you redirect. You keep your communication clean. You keep your posture respectful. You keep your tone steady. You do not fan the flame. You do not confess just to relieve your own tension. You do not seek emotional exclusivity. You do not become the safe little almost that slowly poisons everyone involved. If the interaction must continue because of work, social circles, family circles, whatever it is, you make it simpler, not more charged, shorter, not deeper, clearer, not suggestive. You do not act rude, you act contained. That's called discipline. And discipline is not suppression for image. It is protection for what matters. If you feel yourself getting attached, pull back early. Not dramatically, decisively. Reduce access, reduce fantasy, reduce the private lane. Why? Because a lot of men wait until they are emotionally entangled and then act shocked that it hurts. Of course it hurts. You fed it, you watered it, you named it special, you turned tension into a ritual and then wondered why it started owning you. You stop doing that. You stop needing to be the exception. You stop wanting to be chosen in a place where being chosen would cost your integrity. You stop telling yourself that hidden desire is some rare spiritual event. Sometimes it is just proximity plus unmet needs plus emotional carelessness. Grow up and redirect that energy back into your own life, your purpose, your body, your craft, your standards. Find the part of you that got inflated by her attention and interrogate it. What were you really chasing? Was it her? Or was it the feeling of being powerful, wanted, different, significant? That's where the work is. That's where your freedom is. Because this is not just about a married woman. It is about your relationship to temptation. Can you remain clean when nobody would know? Can you choose principle when secrecy makes compromise feel easy? Can you respect yourself enough to walk away from something emotionally stimulating but spiritually expensive? That is the real test. And if you pass that test, something changes in you. You stop being easy to provoke with attention. You stop being controllable through admiration. You stop being the kind of man who needs morally messy situations to feel alive. You become solid, quietly solid, the kind of man who can stand in complicated dynamics without becoming a complication himself. That is power, not getting her attention, mastering your response to it, not seeing the signs, remaining unshaken by what the signs awaken in you. Not proving you could take what is not yours, proving you do not need to. So yes, the signs can be real. The extra attention, the nervous control, the proximity, the emotional favoring, the hidden availability, the respect for your frame, those things can all mean something. But what they mean about her matters less than what your response says about you. You are not here to feed shadows. You are not here to build identity through secrecy. You are not here to become a side character in someone else's moral confusion. You are here to become a man whose standards hold under pressure, a man who does not need forbidden validation to feel significant, a man who can face desire and still choose dignity. You stop chasing tension. You stop glorifying the almost. You stop calling temptation a connection just because it flatters your ego. You stop mistaking access for alignment. You stop. And then you begin. You begin choosing peace over drama. You begin choosing clarity over chemistry. You begin choosing self-respect over secret thrills. You begin choosing the long view over the impulsive moment. You begin becoming the kind of man who can trust himself in any room. That is the reset. You are not the man who needs to be wanted at any cost. You are not the man who confuses forbidden with valuable. You are not the man who sells his code for emotional excitement. You are not that man anymore. You are the answer. Your discipline is the answer. Your boundaries are the answer. Your restraint is the answer. Your self-respect is the answer. If you want more truth like this, subscribe now, because this is where you come when you are done being played by your impulses and done letting your ego turn temptation into a story. This is where you come to sharpen your mind, strengthen your standards, and remember what kind of man you are. Stay around people who respect reality. Stay around voices that make you stronger, not sloppier. Stay with this community if you want clarity, discipline, and self respect in a world that keeps trying to seduce you out of all three.